Hello and welcome to another episode of Divorce TV. All being well, we've had a couple of technical wobbles, so praying that we've got a lovely special healing for you later today at the end of the show. We've got a real life person, Jonathan, who's going to be sharing his shared story, and we've got a real estate professional expert from America who specialises in helping people who are divorcing. So we're going to have an interview with her a bit later, but first of all, let's catch up on the news. So we're going to start with The Express has written about Riverdale. Why has Michael Kopech filed for divorce from pregnant Vanessa Morgan? So Riverdale may not currently be on our screens, but the drama has continued. The latest update from the cast is to do with the actress behind Tony Topaz. Picture Kopech and Riverdale star Morgan dated for around a year before they announced their engagement in July 2019. The pair then tied the knot in January with a small ceremony at the Walton Historic House in Florida. Morgan recently announced she was pregnant with her first child. In an Instagram post, she said, "I am overjoyed to be welcoming my baby boy into the world this January. It's almost like everything I thought mattered in this life has completely changed. We're here for such a greater purpose and life is so precious." However, just a few days following this post, it was revealed Morgan and Kopech were getting divorced. Kopech and Morgan have split up after 6 months of marriage and just a few days following the pregnancy announcement. The Chicago Tribune reported Kopech, 25, filed for divorce in his home state of Texas on June 19th. The documents were filed in Morris County and a hearing date was not listed. The reason behind Kopech filing for divorce has not been revealed either. So let's again wish them the best of luck in keeping it peaceful. And now to the Mail Online. This is in the UK. We have millionaire former Conservative business minister Richard Harrington split with his wife over her hoarding, court papers reveal, as she argues her disorder means she should get more than half of his £20 million fortune. Former Watford MP Richard Harrington failed in his bid to keep a ruling on the financial dispute under wraps when Judge Anne Hudd concluded her findings should be made public. So this is interesting because it can get quite public when you're doing things through the courts. The judge who analysed the dispute during private hearings in the Central Family Court in London published a ruling along with an explanation of her reasoning. So in the papers, Judge Hudd revealed how Mr. Harrington and his ex-partner Jessie had argued over assets of approximately £20 million after their split. The former MP said the fortune should be divided equally, but Mrs. Harrington wanted to walk away with a 53% share. She argued that 50% would not be enough to meet her needs, including those arising from her disability, after she was recently diagnosed with a hoarding disorder. I'm sure if anyone doesn't know what hoarding is, it's kind of when you just keep collecting things and never throw anything away, as far as I'm aware. But it is a genuine disorder. Mr. Harrington, who was the MP for Watford between 2010 and 2019, had argued the judge's ruling should not be made public. Fair enough, he wanted to keep it all quiet, but the judge said she had made findings about some aspects of Mr. Harrington's behaviour and said publication was in the public interest. In the written explanation of her decision, the judge said, "Given the issues that arose within these proceedings and the findings that I made about some aspects of Mr. Harrington's behaviour and shortcomings in his disclosure, I am satisfied that this is a case in which publication of my judgment would be in the public interest. There is a clear public interest in knowing that public figures are subject to the same treatment as other citizens, and although he is no longer in public office, he was at the relevant time of my decision and throughout the substantive financial remedy proceedings." He had been asked how an extension of the Metropolitan Underground line would affect land in which he had an interest. The judge said he had concealed that the value of the investment would be likely to benefit he had conceded that the value of the investment would be likely to benefit only after a question was asked for a third time. In a statement after the judgment was published, Mr. Harrington said, "From the start of the divorce proceedings, which began after a separation of many years, I believed it right that our assets should be split 50-50. This is what I offered at the outset. After 2 years of considerable and unnecessary expense, this was exactly what the judge ruled." It's I guess the thoughts to pull out of this case is just because you're an MP doesn't mean you can keep your dirty linen out of the court. I mean, in fairness, he wanted to keep it out of court, and he has rightly pointed out that for all that money spent, really they've gained nothing except embarrassment for him. But of course, the bit I'd like to point out is that, you know, when you just disclosure is important. You must just be honest in court. You must answer the questions. In fact, certainly in mediation, collaborative law, all the way through, it's a really good idea not to mess about with the truth, because it does catch up with you. And clearly it feels like this was a sort of punishment from the judge for his behaviour. And of course, if he'd been able to persuade his wife to use mediation or collaborative law, then they would have been able to keep it completely private. One more story. Billionaire ordered to pay £270 million to charity after divorce settlement. I like this story because it's nice to think of so much sort of spare money to give to charity, not just to be fought over by the couple. But it does also show that, you know, when you've got businesses or charities together, things can get very messy. So Chris Hone was told to give money to his ex-wife Jamie Cooper's charity, Big Win Philanthropy. Hedge fund billionaire Sir Chris Hone has been ordered to pay £270 million to a charity set up by his ex-wife in the latest chapter of their acrimonious divorce. The UK's highest court on Wednesday ordered that Hone's Children's Investment Fund Foundation, CIFF, must hand the money to his ex-wife Jamie Cooper's charity, Big Win Philanthropy. The dispute over the charity cash emerged following the couple's bitter divorce in 2014. Hone, who runs the Children's Investment Fund hedge fund, was ordered to pay Cooper a £337 million divorce settlement, one of the largest ever. In 2002, the couple jointly set up the CIFF charity to help children in developing countries. It is one of the biggest charities in the world, with assets of about $4 billion, mostly resulting from the profits of Hone's hedge fund. The Supreme Court heard that the charity became difficult to manage when their marriage broke down. The couple agreed that £270 million of its funds would be transferred to Cooper's new charity in return for her stepping down from the board of CIFF. Cooper, chair and president of Big Win Philanthropy, said, "I am extremely gratified by this Supreme Court's decision. This will enable Big Win Philanthropy to significantly expand its support to African leaders pursuing ambitious initiatives to improve the lives of children and young people." Her lawyer Matthew Donson described the ruling as a complete victory. The truth of her claim could not be denied, no matter how many legal obstacles they tried to throw at her, he said. This is a well-deserved and long overdue victory for Miss Cooper, who has dedicated her life to helping underprivileged children in developing countries and plans to use this money to continue that important mission. So, on that news, we will move towards our expert interview. Hello, Bridget, and welcome. It's lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Susie. I really appreciate you inviting me to be here.
And Bridget, you have a very interesting job, because I'm not aware of us having one of these in the UK. You're a real estate specialist, but you specialise in helping people who are going through divorce.
Yes, I'm from the United States. I'm actually from San Diego, California, and even here in the US, it is not a well-known specialty. There is not a lot of education out there for real estate professionals to help people going through a divorce. I know about 12 or 13 years ago, I did my very first divorce case for an attorney, and it was like the blind leading the blind. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what kind of mistakes I was making. Now I look back and I just shudder to think I did everything wrong that you could imagine. But at the time, there was no education out there, and we sort of had to educate ourselves on how to best take care of our clients and to help the attorneys move the process along.
And in what way is it different from normal real estate? What kind of things did you learn the hard way?
What I think the hardest part is the emotional aspect. When you go to sell your home, even in a traditional experience, it can be stressful. Getting your home ready to sell, deciding where you're going to go, all of those factors are very stressful. But selling your home when you're going through a divorce is exponentially hard because not only are you having to deal with those factors, on top of that, you're having to do the process with somebody that you no longer get along with. There's been cases that I've dealt with where there's been restraining orders or where they're not on speaking terms. And occasionally you'll find an interesting one where maybe one spouse has completely disappeared. So there's a lot of challenges, both legal and emotional, that can affect the sale. And on top of that, a lot of times I think people make emotional decisions that are erratic and they come to regret it later on and maybe make some big mistakes under pressure.
So I guess part of your role is to help them think rationally and to not rush into decisions just because maybe there's a lot of pressure on the divorce. What areas do you specifically help people when? How do you help your clients? Can you give me some examples?
Absolutely. So, depending on where I come in the process, oftentimes I'm referred by their family law attorney, or if they have a mediator through the mediation, one of the clinics here in San Diego. It's always interesting when you come in. The sooner you can bring in a divorce specialist, the better, because we usually bring together a team. We have certified divorce lending professionals that can also help a homeowner decide whether or not selling the home is even the best course of action. A lot of times, one spouse may decide they really want to keep the home. And if that's the case, then we bring in a divorce lending professional that can help us decide if one is able to buy out the other. The other option, a lot of times that happens, is people decide to do nothing. Maybe they've got kids in a school and they don't want to move, so they just keep both names on the title of the home, maybe both names on the mortgage. And that can cause all sorts of problems. If one spouse is responsible for paying the mortgage and stops, you can have credit issues. You hear the horror stories where maybe a family loses their home because one spouse stopped paying the mortgage, the other one's unable to do so. It can cause a lot of problems. And I think sometimes it's important up front to just have a conversation with everybody and say, here are your options, and help them make the best decision for their family.
And if someone's looking to get someone who is perhaps more experienced in this area, how do they know who's the best real estate person? So obviously, if they're in San Diego, they definitely need you. Do you work outside of San Diego as well?
That's a great question, and you're right, because a lot of people don't even know we exist. A lot of people choose to work with maybe a realtor that's a friend of theirs or somebody that they've previously worked with. And sometimes it's hard to use your sister or your best friend when you're going through a divorce and your spouse may not want to work with them, or ex-spouse. So certainly if you can bring in a third party, one of the unique things about being a certified divorce real estate expert is I actually had to take an oath of neutrality, whereas typically a traditional real estate broker does not have to do that. And so you can find me on my social media accounts if you want more information on how to do it. I'm real estate divorce specialist on Instagram and Facebook. Feel free to reach out to me. And if there's not one in your area, I can try to help you find one. But there's a handful around the U.S. I'm not sure by you if there's any. I'm not aware of any educational classes out there, but maybe in the future.
Well, I was going to say, do you train? Do you train people to do this? Because it is everything to do with divorce, especially if you want people to do it peacefully, is very specialised and does take a range of skills. So is there a training course in the making?
That is a good question. You're the first person that's asked me that. I will have to think about that and get back to you.
Well, I hope you let me know if you do. And what kind of, have you got any final examples of situations that people find themselves in that where they were lucky to have you there, whereas if they just used their local real estate agent, they might have found things didn't go so smoothly?
Sure. I'll give you a little extreme example. I had sold a home for a couple. They had already gone through the divorce process, and they were supposed to sell the home, and the in spouse, or the spouse living inside the home still, kept delaying and delaying and delaying, and finally they ended up getting a court order forcing the sale. So they brought me in to do it. We had a time frame with which we had to do it in. And the in spouse was very hesitant. She had raised her 3 kids there. She didn't want to leave. Her kids were still fairly young, and it really just took a little bit of counseling, if you will, and listening to her to help her realize I'm there to help her. I'm a neutral third party. I'm not friends with her ex. I'm there to get the job done. And that was a very difficult one where they could not even speak. They couldn't be on the same emails. I couldn't even have them sign the same contract. So I had to have 2 contracts for everything, which was challenging, but we made it work. And at the end of the transaction, we were able to get it sold. The highlight of it for me was both of them individually called me and said, "Thank you so much. I couldn't have gotten through it without you." And that's where the neutrality really comes in, where you take care of each client and do what's best for them to make sure that they can move on to the next step of their life.
Because it is such a traumatic time, especially if that's where your children have grown up. I think causes more distress around divorce than probably any other aspect. That was lovely. Thank you so much, Bridget, for being on the show. And promise to put your details, please, on the post that I'll be sharing. I'll be tagging you in on the show when it goes live on all the different platforms. So, and
thank you so much,
again another time. Thank you so much. Bye bye, Bridget. Wow. Who's going to be the first estate agent specialising in divorce in the UK? Maybe you're already there. Please get in touch if you are. We're now getting ready for our training, the Divorce Masterclass. So prepare. And today we are still on divorce first aid. It is a massive section, which is why it's the one I started with. It's given me lots of things to talk about. Calendula cream and lavender oil. This is a stage quite far on in the emotional divorce journey, and we're going to cover being sensitive to the latest stages, which is where there's the healing and the grieving. We're not immune either from family breakup and divorce. A lot of people think they are. I certainly thought I was. And how often are people judgmental? We're going to talk a little bit about that. And are families really ever broken? I start with a quote from Cheryl Nielsen. This is a real truism. Grief is the emotional contract of divorce. Healing is now beginning. Grief is one of the later stages of the process. So it may seem like a retrograde step from the outside. That's the point we start to think, oh, I'm going backwards, but no, not at all. It's a really important part for the process. But that ability to deal with the immense sense of loss is really vital to moving forwards. So your divorcing friends or colleagues may seem to become withdrawn if you're the one watching them, but that's okay. And if you're the one who's going through the divorce, that's okay. You're going to be a bit quieter at this time as you're really processing everything. And others may want you to talk about past relationships without, and they may expect you to have rancor and blame. So it's really important that if you're supporting someone with divorce, don't encourage them to say horrible things about their ex. This is the point where they're grieving. We want them to have got through all the anger. They've done all that now, okay? So don't pull them backwards. Instead, honour the good parts of the relationship. And now, this is the moment, this is the time in the process where people can start to have that conversation, because it's really painful to remember why you love someone or all the wonderful times. It's agony actually at that point, but now you're ready to start doing that, but you need a lot of care and a lot of empathy. Guilt can play a part, because you can start feeling, taking on your own sense of responsibility of your part in the relationship. So it's tricky, because nobody likes to feel that they had have any responsibility to these things. So there can be a certain amount of guilt, and this is a time to really learn how to let that go, and to think about how to begin to forgive. For those who have divorced long ago, this is quite an interesting experience that I found. Other people who've gone through it already, they can start to have their buttons pushed when you get to this stage of the grieving and starting to see your own part in what happened, because they may not have done that themselves, and they actually may find that difficult. So for those who are advising you and supporting you, definitely ask them and make sure that they've already grieved their own past relationships, or because that lack of their own processing could spill over into yours. If your parents were divorced, here's some scary facts for you. You're at least 40% more likely to get divorced than if they weren't. If your parents married others after divorcing, you, as their children, are 91% more likely to get divorced. This could be because witnessing our parents' divorces reinforces our ambivalence about commitment in a disposable society. For most people, it's easier to get a new freezer than fix the one you've got. So if you have a daughter, you're nearly 5% more likely to divorce than if you have a son. Remember, these are just statistics. Don't start worrying about your own family, but it's interesting nonetheless. This figure multiplies with the numbers of daughters or sons. Perhaps this is happening because fathers get more invested in family life when they have boys. PolitiFact.com estimated in 2012 that the lifelong probability of a US marriage ending in divorce is between 40 to 50%. 36% of the US population aged between 50 and 69 have been divorced at least once in their lives. So if you do the sums, you'll see that on average in the US there are 2 divorces every minute. In the UK, we're a bit smaller, it's about 13 divorces every hour. In 1986, there was a UK divorce rate peak of 44% of married couples divorcing in that year. But current trends have shown a rate, according to the Office of National Statistics calculations, of more around 42%. However, this is often quoted by the media as our divorce rate, but they exclude people who were married outside of the UK. If you take all marriages, including all the expats, into the figures as UK citizens, then the rate of divorce is actually not 42% but 39%. So 1 in 5 newlyweds divorce after 10 years of marriage, with the likelihood of a marriage ending in divorce further shrinking with each decade. A tiny 2% of weddings end in divorce after 30 years of marriage, with divorce rates after 40 years of marriage even rarer. So fewer than 0.5% of couples divorce after being married for 40 years or more. So the longer, if you can get past the first 10 years, you're doing well. Currently, a quarter of all births in the UK are recorded as being from couples who are cohabiting and not married. So of course that's where both parents are registered though on the birth certificate and have the same address. This means the parents lack the protection of the marriage laws, since common law marriage has never really existed in the UK, and this can make their breakup even more scary, as I know from my own experience. But the emotional aspects are just as horrible as that of any legal divorce. We have around about 2.9 million cohabiting couples in the UK. An opinion poll conducted by Comres to coincide with Resolution's Family Dispute Resolution Week a while back confirms the importance of providing support to families undergoing a divorce or separation. The poll found that the overwhelming majority of people are the poll found that the overwhelming majority of people in London believe that putting children's interests first or avoiding conflict are the most important factors when undergoing family breakdown. That's very healthy. But what's most disturbing about that Comres poll is that despite the overwhelming desire to avoid conflict, 3/4 of people believe that children end up being the main casualties of divorce, and over 1/3 believe that conflict is inevitable in family breakdown. So in order to change this perception, what we need is not just to guide divorcing couples towards divorce mediators and collaborative divorce lawyers. We need a cultural shift throughout the UK and the USA that will change the expectations of parents as to how they navigate family breakup. It shouldn't be seen as normal for it to be angry. It should be seen as normal for it to be peaceful. There is a national cost as well to family breakup because the ripple effects of divorce and family separations have wide social consequences. A preliminary report on the costly consequences of divorce indicates divorce and its direct and indirect economic consequences cost the United States, wait for it, $33.3 billion per year, or $312 per household throughout the country. It is estimated that the average divorce costs state and federal governments $30,000 in direct and indirect cost. Direct costs include child support, enforcement, healthcare costs, temporary assistance for needy people, funds, food stamps, public housing, etc. Indirect costs include legal fees, lost work productivity, correctional facilities, unwed childbearing, dealing with drug problems, delinquency, criminality, and other social problems linked to divorce. Given this information, the cost to the state of Tennessee, looking at Census 2000 data, is more than $1 billion annually. So the full cost of family failure in the UK is estimated at £44 billion per year. This is higher than the UK defence budget. It's more than we spend on war. So many families, like my own, are still termed broken families with a single parent at the helm. But the reality is that our families are not broken. We co-parent effectively with our ex-partners as extended families. And one of the key factors in being able to achieve this is not to have undergone a bitter and expensive legal battle to separate the lives of the parents. The biggest cost being borne by the children. Jennifer Weiner in Flyaway Home writes, "Divorce isn't such a tragedy staying in an unhappy marriage, teaching your children the wrong things about love. Nobody ever died of divorce." Now we're going to move forwards to a shared story, and I'm going to introduce you to Jonathan. Hello Jonathan, and welcome, and thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your stories. I think it's really important for people to share their experiences, and you, as people will see who are watching this, I'll see you're Jonathan Burston of Fearless Divorce, so I'm guessing that there has been a bit of a connection between your own experience and what you then went on to do, a bit like me. So let's start first though with what happened to you. What's your story?
Great, thanks for having me along, Susie. Delighted to be here. Well, I got divorced quite a number of years ago now, and I went to some dark places in the process of divorce, and didn't know really where to turn to because I had elderly parents and didn't really want to worry them. Had issues with friends taking one side of the fence as opposed to being sat somewhere in the middle, and solicitors costing me an awful lot of money. And about 12 months in, I woke up one morning and thought, I'm going to have to coach myself through this, because I didn't know where to turn. I wasn't after, from a therapy perspective, a solution there. I wanted some solution that was going to take me forward as opposed to reflect on looking backwards in that scenario. And I then crafted a process for myself and started to apply all the things I used to do in business to my own divorce, and realized actually that divorce is just a business negotiation with a lot of emotion associated with it. And often that is forgotten as part of the process. And also, I realized that I needed to see what the future looked like. And if I designed what I wanted my future to look like, that would help me navigate the outcome I was seeking from the divorce, and to ensure that I was in control of my emotions, and the potential events that were going to be thrown at me by my ex, to ensure that I arrived at the right outcome with the minimum amount of disruption, minimum amount of antagonism, negativity, because I just didn't want to be another one of the divorce statistics of a typical man, saying, "Oh, I've been taken to the cleaners," and all that sort of nonsense, and be bitter about it. And I recognise divorce has two sides to every story, and somewhere in the middle there is the truth. But from my perspective, I wanted to look back in years to come and say to my children, I did the best I could do under the circumstances, and would I change what I did? No. Could I have done things probably a bit better? Yes, in circumstances. But I've come out of the other side with a much more positive relationship with my ex now. We're on good speaking terms, and we have a good back to the point you were making a moment ago, good co-parenting relationship. And from my experience, then it was about actually, why did we have to be a statistic? Why do we have to be like that? And then there are other people who need that help as well. Hence why I then started to help friends and family along the way.
And then it became a career change.
It did. It surprisingly took off. It was more of a side of the desk project to start with, and then more and more through friends referring me, and then referrals of people wanting that advice to say, I want to do something different. I want to have clarity on my future. I want to be in control of it, of my divorce, and I want to have the confidence to be able to navigate it. And that support of somebody in your corner, coaching, challenging, coaxing, prodding, making sure that you're building momentum to move it forward in a positive way, recognizing you can only control what you do. You can't control anybody else's behavior. But if you look after yourself, you can use the experience as a catalyst for positive change, as opposed to one that has just got grey clouds weighing on your shoulders, and then you get divorced and you go, well, what do I do next? I'm an advocate of using the divorce process, of designing your future life when you're going through that divorce, so that when you open the door to life beyond divorce, whether it's been done to you or you're doing it, you know where you're going, and you're in a much better position to live a positive life beyond divorce, and not use it as purely a bitter part of your life. It is a major life event, but you can use it as a catalyst for positive change.
And absolutely agree. And I'm delighted to be welcoming you onto the divorce directory at the moment, alternative divorce directory. And I love the fact that because I'm a massive fan of coaching in divorce. I think a lot of people and a lot of lawyers tend to think, send people to a counsellor, but actually quite often what they really need is someone to give them a very structured program and help them to take responsibility to build. And I know you have a very structured program. You'll be putting some information on the in the comments about that. But just to finish with, I'd love to just ask you, I often get people acting as though the fact that we ended up with a good co-parenting relationship, as though, that was like that all the time. And of course that, certainly in my case, was very far from the truth. The reality is it's not an easy thing to achieve. So did you find that you just floated through that and were friends all the way? Or can you give us a bit of a reality check on that?
I would like to say that, but I'd be lying. When you're when you're divorcing, you by nature go through the challenges of almost becoming a bit of competition between parents if you're not careful. And we set some ground rules out to start with of what we would do in the divorce and what we wouldn't do, and particularly in relation to our daughters. And that allowed us then to say, well, actually, the children don't get involved. They won't speak through the children. They don't get mixed messages, and they never see us argue. So from that perspective, that's almost started to design the co-parenting structure beyond the divorce. And we started there was a bit of toing and froing of how it was going to operate in terms of the co-parenting and the responsibilities, and who was going to do it, who was going to do that. But and it took a little bit of, I say, stepping stones, really, of tentative steps, and probably a little bit of frustration at times as you're starting to deal with a new normal. But then over time, you start to slot into a more even pattern of realizing what works for both of you, and having the flexibility to help each other when there needs to be help. And as an example, through the whole of this lockdown scenario, there's been times when I've done some shopping, they're 3 miles away, shopping for my ex-wife and my daughters there most time because of some health issues there. So, you can use it as a catalyst, and you can use it as a way of designing that co-parenting structure. Is it easy? No, it isn't. And there are always going to be times when there's a bit of tetchiness. and one wants this, one wants that. But you get that in a married life with children. It doesn't just because you're divorced doesn't make it suddenly easier or any harder for that matter. You just have to remember that you're both grown ups, and you both have responsibility for people that you've brought into this world, and you have to be adult about it. But we often forget about that because of our own ego associated with, my ex-partner and what they did to me and what they did this. But you've got to try and raise yourself above that, particularly from a children perspective, and put that to one side, and really move on and look after your children, because it's not their fault you got divorced. And you've got to design that so that they get the best of both of you in different circumstances to what they invariably got brought into the world into.
Absolutely, we all just have to grow up, don't we? And but it's worth it. It's painful sometimes, but looking back, we do grow through that experience as people, and that is actually very exciting. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for being on the show, and I look forward to having you back very soon in the Ask the Expert slot. Bye for now.
Thanks very much. Bye.
So there's a little bit of background noise coming on a Friday, so I'm hoping that my wonderful little techie darling is going to shoot out in the background in a minute and shut the door so there's less background noise coming in. But I'm going to go through the divorce financial workshop that we... I'm just going to go... I've just realised I've got a lovely little promo in. I just made this, and because we've got this divorce financial workshop coming up, I've made a little bit of a promo with Wellers Law, who are very kindly sponsoring it, and we'll be giving a certain amount of free legal advice access as well. The divorce financial workshop that we've created is interactive.
Wellers think the online divorce workshops are a fantastic way of getting in touch with experts.
It's not as overwhelming as they think.
Relaxing, friendly.
Of course, with the collaborative law process, matters are more amicable, and the more amicable things are, the cheaper it is.
Actually, the funny thing is that I didn't actually initially want to go into this area of law.
Professionals that you may need to assist you in the future, be it divorce lawyers, counsellors, therapists.
I fell into it, and now I actually love it because my personality is like that. I like helping people, and I feel like I am giving something.
Sitting at home through the computer.
The biggest mistakes that I've come across, burying their head, not dealing with things.
Family dynamics, if there's a second relationship.
Yeah. Using children as a tool against the other.
Putting assets into trust for the benefit of children.
Thinking it's going to be cheap and quick.
Guardianship for children, inheritance tax, that's quite a big one.
It also provides you with access to other professionals that you may not feel you need to be speaking with at the present time, but you may need to in the future.
The problem in most cases is that people are just not well informed, and keeping people informed is extremely important because they also then are aware of their options.
I've been collaboratively trained for around 13 years now, and I've conducted a number of collaborative matters. I haven't had any that have failed. Collaborative law can be a much cheaper and time-efficient solution. It gives you the opportunity to reach an agreement rather than one being imposed on you by the court. It's a really fantastic process to engage with. I trained as a collaborative lawyer because I thought it was really important, particularly with family work, to deal with matters amicably and non-confrontationally. And it really does just take some tension and heat out of what could be otherwise quite a nasty situation. I just feel it's important that families, couples recognise that you can deal with matters amicably.
On the divorce financial workshop, we have some brilliant specialists there, focused on dispute resolution, keeping you out of court, saving you thousands and thousands of pounds, and taking the fear of the finances out of the divorce process. And we're recording it and putting it in a special safe place for those of you who perhaps get interrupted by the children or life, and we want to make sure that you get the full value out of this workshop. I look forward to welcoming you at our divorce financial workshop. and the QR code will take you through if you'd like to. We're taking bookings right now. It's only £35 to come along, and you'll get access to free stuff from our wonderful experts who are on it. Freeze this and use this if you're not already in the Best Way to Divorce Facebook group. And this is our secret divorce group, where we spend most of the time in there, and it's a really good supportive environment. So now we're getting ready for our healing, so get yourself comfy, and I'm going to bring in our lovely healer. So you ready now? Got yourself seated, few deep breaths. I'm really looking forward to this one, and ready for the slide to intro, and then I'll introduce you. And Marilyn is going to be brought in, and she seems to have completely disappeared, which is a real shame because I was really looking forward to that. Well, it can't be helped. We'll get her back for another show when she gets better set of here we go. Sorry about that. I was really looking forward to it, but we'll get her back at some point. Maybe I'll pre-record her if she's got a dodgy Wi-Fi. And we are actually running over anyway. I hope you found that it's quite a lot of information. I do think it is important for us to come down at the end and settle, and there may be things that you've seen and heard that you found challenging or annoying or pushed your buttons. Feel free to share those in the comments, and to get in touch as well if you have a story that you'd like to share. They don't have to be 100% positive. They have to be positive in the sense that you got through it and that you're not left bitter and twisted. Obviously we don't need those stories because we all know people who are in that place. So people who've somehow managed to get past that and have something to share with the rest of us are very welcome. And such a shame about our healer, but we'll get, as I said, we'll get her back another time. And you'll just have to go through one of the previous episodes, go to the end, and if you do what I do, is I often quite listen to the healings again, because they're definitely worth a few goes. So I'm going to now leave us on the basis that in the war of divorce, always make peace your weapon of choice.